Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Evolution Podcast. Today, I have a special guest. She's going to be sharing her story. We're going to be talking about a lot of things that a lot of people do experience even till this day, and most people are not brave enough to be able to actually come out, tell their story. But she's a survivor of something which is, I'm not going to give it out. But Kay, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kay. I'm a domestic abuse survivor of 12 years. And after I went through my domestic abuse, for so long, we just feel scared to talk about our story. We don't want to come out. We don't want people to judge us. And so for so long, I stayed quiet about it. And it was just like, just move on with my life. I just want to close that chapter and move on. And I seen someone that I loved that was very, very close to me who was going through the exact same thing just years after I went through it. And that was kind of what sparked me, because I seen someone I loved going through this. And I said, something has to give, something has to change, someone has to say something. So I said, you know what, the hell with it, that someone's going to be me. So I started talking out about it.
So if you don't mind relieving it, because the audience coming in, we're not familiar with your story, right? We're not familiar with what happened. So how did it happen? What was the situation? How did you get into that position where, something obviously that bad happened?
So I was groomed at 16 years old by a grown man. So he had brought me into his church and got me really involved in the church. And the church was pushing for me to marry him. And I was only a child. I was 16 years old and he was 23. And it was wrong in every way possible. And I ended up getting married. I was 18 when I got
at 16. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
19, I was mom. And that was when I realized that my entire world was upside down. I was in an abusive relationship, physically abusive, emotionally abusive. It was a mess. And I was in that relationship until I was 24.
And so I have a question. So where were, I'm just trying to piece together the story. Where were your parents in this?
My mom was here. And of course, when you're teenagers, you don't listen. My mom told me right from day one, she was like, he is bad news. And, you're a kid, you think you know everything and that you're an adult. Mm-hmm. Oh, he tells me how I'm this amazing person. He's taking me to church and, he sees that I'm so mature for my age. And I really thought that this person loved me. And my mom, of course, my parents seen right through him, and they kept telling me no grown man wants to be with a little girl. Why isn't he with someone his own age? Why can't you see that? And for me, I was so blinded by the fact that this person, he was taking me to church and telling me all the right things I wanted to hear. And I also, I was very young and I had some daddy issues because my father is very toxic. So he was giving me all those things that I needed. And for me, it was like, oh, the butterflies, the romantic, and oh, I love him. And then the second that ring went on my finger, I quickly realized what it really was. And then it was trying to get out. And it took me years to get out because I then had a child with him. And my son against me. So it made it very hard for me to be able to get out, because when I would try to, he would, take my son from me or say, if you leave, I'll kill you before I let you get out the front door with my son.
Interesting. So the reason why I bring this up is because I hate to say this, and my sisters, I don't like to talk about their business, but my eldest sister, because this comes very near and dear to me, right? So my oldest sister, she's 40, turning 40 soon, and she was also a victim of the same thing. I don't want to say the word, but because we were going to be on YouTube and the algorithm and stuff, but. I remember this was in 2011. She met this man. He was a politician. He was the nicest person. He was so nice. Everyone was like, oh my God, where did you meet this guy? It must be a godsend. And then fast forward, I was at the wedding. I was like, well, posted pictures and all. And then, they get married, right? Instantly they get married. We stopped seeing our sister, right? She stopped coming out, right? Yeah. And, we would see her once in a while, but I remember I never knew what was going on because I moved on to college. Everything continued. And I remember coming back home, and then they start telling me the stories. So she starts telling me she had a miscarriage because he used to beat her up over when she was pregnant. Right. So what ended up happening was she couldn't leave the house. She couldn't leave the house. She could barely, she was fed scraps to eat, which was so very, very, it's weird, to even think about the fact that someone was capable of that. But then what ended up happening was similar situation with, we talked about his son, was he ended up, she ran away with two of her kids, my niece and my nephew. She ran away. And then I don't know how he did it, but he was able to sweet talk her back into the house. Yeah. So then she comes back in the house And now she runs away again a year later, but this time it's like you're not getting. She ran away, and now we still can't find our niece and nephew because it took them. We don't even know where they are.
Oh,
So and the reason why I'm bringing that because it's something that a lot of people face, just like you said, and not everyone comes to talk about it. So in the part as to how did he use your son? What was the leverage? Because you said you had him at a very young age.
yes, I was 19, well, just turning 20 when I had him. And right from the jump, it was, if you ever do this, I will take him from you. I will make sure you never see him again. So that fear kept me there. And then when I would try to leave, he would rip him out of my arms and say, "You can leave, but I will never let you take my son. And if you try to, I will kill you before you make it past the front steps." And, it was just constant, constant. And then as my son got older, I really tried to protect him and keep him from those things. And we went to court and I got custody of my son. And I thought, I'm doing all the things, I'm making the steps. But what we don't realize is narcissists are so good at wearing that mask and fooling people. And he is a classic textbook narcissist. So I have spent the last, my goodness, about 8 years in the court system, just back and forth and back and forth over my son. And he would just show up randomly at the school, take my son and flee the province. And police wouldn't help me. They said, he doesn't have a record. He doesn't have this or that. And even though he did get arrested when he was abusing me, that wasn't enough because that had nothing to do with my son. That was me and him. So I had no idea where my son was for a week. And when I got my son back, that was kind of my final straw when I said, the police aren't doing their job. I feel like I'm stuck in a corner and I don't know what to do. So I took my son, I fled my home, and we moved to a different city.
Interesting. And this was happening in Canada.
Yes.
What part of where in Canada?
I'm in Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. Okay. So I'm thinking about it so when everything started happening, right? Did you tell anybody what was going on?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had a good support system.
Okay.
The hardest part was just that I felt so backed into a corner because, I have a lawyer who's saying, he can't do that. And then when I'm taking it to the police and saying, well, my lawyer said this, and they're saying, well, and it just brushed under the rug. And it took 10 years before I met an amazing police officer who took it seriously. And he opened my file and said, "You are high risk. This man could kill you, and I am going to help you." And he got me a panic button. I had cameras around my home, and I actually, for once, felt safe in my life.
Interesting. So you had cameras in your home. This was after you left.
Yes. So this was actually just last year, because after I fled and I came here, because we've been separated for, at the time, 10 to 11 years when we moved here. And while we were in court, we had a new judge, and I don't know if she just didn't read my file, but she gave him my new address. And I was devastated.
Interesting.
Yeah.
She gave him your new address.
Gave him my new address. So
Interesting.
I went right to the local paper and I did a whole story on it. Officer who helped us, and he got cameras all around our property to make sure that we were safe, and a panic button that I had to carry on me at all times. So it was very scary.
Interesting. But okay, so 12 years after you found a support group, but while everything was going on, were you able to speak out about it?
Yes, I've been speaking out about it since 2017. So that was the year that the person that I loved was going through what she was going through. And that was what made me start to say, what, I need to speak out about this. I need to talk about this. And the first thing I did was I applied for the pageant to give myself a title so that I could get out there and make it easier to open doors for me to public speak. And for the last 7 or 8 years now, I've been traveling throughout Nova Scotia, speaking at different women's groups, at high schools, and various different events.
Interesting. So, okay, now, if you're looking back now, I wouldn't say you're an expert at this, but looking back now, is there signs that obviously you were 16 when it started happening, but is there signs that you could say, what, for let's say a woman is, in her 20s or 30s and, she doesn't know she's dealing with somebody with that same personality or that persona. Are there signs that someone can be looking at like, ooh, well, this person has the same thing?
Oh yeah, there were so many red flags. Just the fact that, his age alone, that was a huge thing.
How old was he?
He was 23.
And you was, okay.
A lot of it was the control. It was constant control. I had to do everything he wanted. I had to like who he liked, be what he wanted, be what he liked, and mold it into what he wanted me to be. I had no freedom or control of my own.
Interesting. So did you don't have to, but did anything get physical? Were you, like?
It started getting physical the second that ring went on my finger.
Oh my God. Wow. So interesting. It
seems like what they do is they sweet talk you and give you all the things you want to get you in that position of where they want you. And then once they have you there, it's like, okay, I got her. And then that's when the monster comes out.
And then, so for the first 2 years of getting to know this individual, there was no signs.
There were small signs, but nothing that I really noticed. It was more just everything was about the Bible. So he always used the Bible to control me. When I didn't do what he wanted, you're supposed to be a Christian wife. I'm trying to build you into a wife. We can't be unevenly yoked. You need to do what I say. I'm the head and you're the tail, and you need to follow what I'm telling you to do.
Interesting. That's wow. So that's good. Okay. Now I'm thinking about it from a perspective of, okay, so how does someone, because you go through that and you said that was what, 12 years?
Mm-hmm.
So you go through that for 12 years. Now, how do you go from, that 12 years to being in a position in which now you seem to me like you've been able to put yourself together.
It's a lot of therapy.
Right. But how do you overcome that? How do you come back from that?
Honestly, I don't have a great answer for that. I started going to therapy because I didn't want to be broken. I kind of looked in the mirror and was just like, I don't want this to be who I am. I want to be successful. I have goals. And for years, I was putting myself on hold because this person was controlling me and not letting me be who I was and authentically being me. And I just so badly I wanted to do my photography. I wanted to get out there and talk. I wanted to help people. I always wanted to be a teacher. And I just said, you know what? Like, this doesn't have to be my story. And I'd seen so many women that I love that went through the same thing and what it did to them. And I was just like, I don't want to be another bitter woman who feels like every man out there is a piece of crap. I want to be a woman who believes in love. And I know that there's someone out there that's for me, but I need to fix me before I can find someone who can love me. So I started going to therapy. I started joining women's groups and getting out there with other women and just knowing that I wasn't alone.
So okay, and just to backtrack, because there's a few questions I have, but to backtrack, because you said a friend of yours in 2017 started going through the same thing. So in what sense, how did you know what was going on? Did she come tell you? What was the situation? Was she married to this individual?
She thankfully was not married to him. And she was actually having a baby. And she was me crying one night. And I said, what's going on? And she said, I just had a C-section and I'm outside and having a little smoke break out on the sidewalk. And he started screaming and yelling at me. He grabbed me by my hair, threw me in the ground and started punching me in the face. And while we're talking, she goes on FaceTime and her lips are all bleeding. And I just started crying. And I said, you watched me go through this. I said, why are you letting someone do this to you? And I was like, you need to get out. And then she had another baby with him. And I just kept watching the abuse escalating and escalating. And it was breaking me because she's like a sister to me. And that was when I just said, something has to change. Someone has to speak out, because when we all stay quiet and we just have that one person we talk to, that's not going to make change. And I wanted to be someone who would make change and help women know that they weren't alone and that they had a safe space to come to.
So what is the status of this relationship now?
She's not with that person anymore. She's now a single mom.
Okay. All right. So let's think of, because it's very obviously, thinking about it, it's crazy. But what was her justification for staying?
I honestly don't know. I used to ask her that all the time myself. I was like, what is making you stay? And she never really had an answer. It was just kind of, well, I know that he has problems and I have problems and we're just, we're healing, and it was just always a different excuse. I find that's what we do a lot of the time because I'm guilty of it too. When I was with my abuser, I seen the signs after I married him. I knew I was in an abusive relationship, but I made every excuse because, of course, I was also humiliated because everybody told me what he was and I didn't want to listen. So it was just kind of the buttercupping and telling people and making excuses. And I just didn't want to have to say, you know what, you guys were right and I need to get out. And then there's also that fear, because with narcissists, a lot of the time it's about finances. They control you through manipulating you with money, putting everything in their name. That way it makes it harder for you to leave because you rely on them for a home, food in your belly, because I was a stay-at-home mom. He had me staying home with the kid while he was out working, partying, and living his life. And I didn't even know how I would get out. How do you pay rent when you don't have a job? So all these things kind of factored in where it was just easier to stay because you didn't know how you were going to leave. And it was also terrifying of, what am I going to do? I have a kid. How am I going to provide for my child? I don't even have a job.
So there's a part of me that's like, okay, so let's there's two parts that I want to kind of go into here. And the first part is because listening to this, right, a lot of women are going to listen to this and go, okay, well, game over. I am going to be working and I will never rely on a man again. So there's that camp. And there's another camp of women who say, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to stay at home with the kids. I want to stay there. I want to teach my kids. I want to do that. Now, is because because there's also the picture as to, because a lot of men have been painted the picture of being, abusers, or painted as being bad and being all that. But if you were presented in a position in which there was a woman who was like, yeah, you know what, I want to be a stay-at-home mom, or I want to stay with my kids, what would you say to her?
I personally loved being a stay-at-home mom, and it was beautiful because I wanted to homeschool. I wanted to be there for my kids, but it was just for me about having a fallback plan and knowing that if anything were to happen, that I could take care of my child. And I think that's the only thing that I kind of wish I could go back on a little bit, was wishing that I had done a little bit more, even if it was just something on the side of having a good support system in place of, even a women's group where you're just kind of getting around some other women and knowing that you're not alone. But for me, it was just so much. I was so secluded. I was taken away from my family. I was really only seeing them when there were family events and things going on. So it's really just making sure you have that support system of women, no matter what you're doing, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, just having that support and knowing that you're not alone. Because whether you're in an abusive relationship or whatever the situation is, it's just having that support, whether it's in a marriage or just having support as a parent, because parenting is hard in general. So just
Mhm.
always about, just having that safe space of support, because it's so important for us to know that we're not alone, that we have community. And I'm such a big community person, because you don't know what people are going through behind closed doors.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting there. So, basically, just to unpack it, it's for those who choose to be stayed, because it's not. I also want to be in a position in which we also understand, not to paint a picture that not all men are abusers, and not
Oh,
men all men. There's a small minority that take it a little bit, that go the a path that we don't even know what's going on there. But I don't think majority of men are in that camp. So, thinking about this, so now I want to focus more on the kids, because not a lot of people talk about what also the impact of the kids, because kids are, how would I put it, they're impressionable in the senses to think about, like, molding, right? They take on the environment that you're in, right? So now your son, how old is he's 12 now, or
14.
he's 14? Okay, so you have a 14-year-old son. Now, has this affected him in a negative way? Did he have to go through therapy, to be able to overcome this? What?
My son is in therapy.
Okay.
I got him in therapy right away because I was very concerned. He didn't see a lot of the abuse physically, but it was a lot of shaming. He heard a lot of the shaming. He was shamed by his father. At the time, we didn't know that he was autistic.
Mm.
And ex-husband is very much about looks, how you look, and you have to be cool and you have to wear the cool clothes. My son was very soft and very sensitive. So he was picked on by his father. You got to man up. You can't be some little baby. Don't be crying all the time. And so he was constantly just pushed and pushed and pushed. So he learned to be quiet and to kind of just cluster in and hermit. So it was to kind of bring him out of that. So we got him into therapy, we got him into some group sessions with other kids, and just getting him out there with some other children so that he knew he had some other kids to play with, and just not being in this environment of, wanting to stay in his room all the time, because he constantly just wanted to be alone in his room.
Wow. Well, I can't imagine what because the for most sons, I mean, boys, your father is your first role model, right? It's the first person you look up to. And, like, I had a conversation with my son, early of 2023, and we're talking, and I was like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because I want to be like you. I was like, you could be like a president or something, why you want to be like me? But he's like, no, Dad. He's like, because it's like, you're cool. And I was like, I'm cool. Okay, all right, I'll take that. But every kid wants to, they emulate that. And I'm just thinking about him from a perspective as to, the person he's supposed to be emulating, he can't emulate because of, the traits that's, impacted in there. But that's just, that's it. That's sad on its own. But and I'm just thinking about it from this perspective now, as to, because you say you speak out, right? You speak out. So what have you seen out there since you started speaking out? The women, when women come out to you, because obviously they talk about these stories. So is this still something where, does it's still rampant in 2023/2024? Is it something that's still going on, the abuse and all that?
It is. And, I'm really grateful that so many things have changed, because I know when I was going through it, there wasn't really a lot of support.
Hmm.
Um, that there were several times that I tried to get out and I would call for help, and it was, go live in a shelter. And it was like, I have a home, I have a child. Where do I put my things? there was just no support, no financial support. So I just stayed. And I'm very grateful today with the amount of women that I work with that there's so much support for women to get out today. They're talking about it more. There's different homes for women, there's different financial availabilities. So there's so much more knowledge and help for women to get out. So it's making it a lot easier for women not to feel that they're stuck and that they have to stay in a cycle of abuse.
But then again, what about if I'm going to play devil's advocate here and come from a perspective of a woman who's going, well, we have 5 kids together.
Mhm.
How am I going to raise 5 kids? How am I going to, what are they going to do? I can't be a single mom. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to be out there by myself. Or what are people, what is society going to think about me? I don't want to be another statistic. What would you say to that person that's in that environment?
I'm very big on empowering women, of telling her worth. You need to know your worth, and that no matter what you were going through, you are better than any excuse you can come up with to stay in that position. There is so much available to you. But for me, I didn't love myself. And that was a big part of it. And I'm not saying that for any other woman. Every woman has her reason. But for me, I had a lot of my own trauma stuff. And when I looked in the mirror, I didn't have love for that girl. And I just kept staying and staying. And we have to know our worth, and that no matter what it is, no matter how hard it is, you can do this. And on top of it, it's about my kid. I didn't want my child to see that. I would rather my child see me maybe struggling a little bit to get by, but knowing that my mom fought to do everything she could to make sure that I had a good life and that I didn't grow up seeing that abuse. And that was my main thing that helped me get out. Was I was looking at my son and saying, I don't want my son to think that this is how men treat women and that this is normal.
Interesting. You said that, and coming back now, your parents. I mean, is it when you told them what happened? Did they come up from a position of like, oh, I told you so? I told you not to do this, or was it kind of more like, okay, what's happened has happened. Now let's focus on the healing aspect of things.
When I came out,
When you told your mom what happened, was it because then again, there's 2 to 3 camps you can get from your parents, right? You can get the parents like, I told you, don't do that. You didn't listen. This is why you listen, and then they get angry, and then they say it's all your fault. You should never have done that. And then you also get a camp with the parents who's like, okay, well, we understand what's happened has happened. Now, how do we move forward? What support do you need? Were they more supportive, or were they more of a position of like, hey, I told you not to do that?
my mother was very supportive. Um,
Okay.
thing was because I hid it from her for so long because I didn't want to hear I told you so.
Mm,
So long, and she's not stupid. She's my mom. She knew what was happening. She kept saying to me, I know this is happening and you're not telling me the truth and I need you to be honest. And it was always, oh, that bruise is because I fell down the stairs or this, or it was always me covering up the mess. I didn't want her to know. And when I finally got to that point where I was like, I need help, unfortunately, the circumstances were not great of how my mother found out because it was the police bringing me to her home in the middle of the night with my face all.
mm.
So that was the initial, okay, this is happening. So it wasn't like I got the opportunity to actually sit her down and say, you know what, mom, this is what's really happening. It was the police bringing me to my mother's at midnight with my body all busted up and saying your daughter was assaulted. And then having that conversation. And she was very supportive, but of course she was angry as well, where it was just like, why didn't you tell me? I've always made this safe space for you to talk. Why didn't you tell me?
Mm.
She was very supportive. She helped me get on my feet, and I'm very grateful for that. She gave a roof over my head for 8 months while I got my stuff together and got myself a studio space. So I'm very grateful that I had the support that I had from her.
I'm just backtracking and just going. It's because you put yourself as a parent. That's not the one thing you want your kid to come and tell you. Because I'm thinking as a parent, because I'm not even gonna say it. If my daughter ever came to me and said that, I'm not even gonna say it on live, TV. We leave it to the law and all that. But so did you call the cops and then they came and then they told you, or they told your parents, or how did they find you?
So the night that this happened, I had found out he was cheating on me. I don't know why that was the straw that broke everything because I stayed for so long. But when I found out he cheated, I felt so dirty and used and disgusted. And he was the only man I was ever with. So for some reason, that was my breaking point. And I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And when I did, and I ran down to my room and I locked the door and I actually called a girlfriend and said, I need help. And that was the first time I ever spoke out and admitted it. and she just lived down the street. So she came flying to my house and she busted the front door down and she came downstairs and she got me out of, I was hiding under my bed. She pulled me out. She was like, pack a bag right now. I'm going to get your son. You have 5 minutes to be outside in the car. And if you're not outside in 5 minutes, I'm calling the cops. So I packed up my things. I got in her car. We went to her house and then we called the police to make sure that I was first safe and my child was safe. And
Hmm.
so
Wow. And that was the first time. That was the first time that the police had ever been involved. Wow. That's interesting. And then where is he now?
he passed away last April.
If you don't mind me asking, what happened?
To be honest, I don't 100% know. His mother has always covered his tracks no matter what he does. So when he passed away, she wouldn't tell me. I actually found out he passed away on Facebook because they didn't even call to tell my son that his father passed away. I found out online. So I
You
don't
know,
exactly know.
this is like a this. I'm not saying this to be a jest, but I'm like this could be a movie, like a true crime movie. Like you could. I'm not saying that in any way, but it's like the ending that was honestly I didn't expect that.
I'm telling you, I tell this to my husband all the time. I'm like, I swear to God, if people knew my story, they could make a movie off of it. Because
So you said so you're remarried again. You got married again.
so
Oh, okay. All right.
kind of-
So we're getting some happy positive side for this.
yeah, I just got married in September to my best friend.
Congratulations. So how long have you did you know him when all this was going on? Was it
We've been friends for 8 years, so I met him 2 years after I left him.
wow? Interesting. Wow. That's wow. Well, at least you were able to, because I think a lot of people would be in a position in which they would not be open to being in a position of letting another person in. And I think there's gonna be some element of that trauma that's been in there. But I mean, good on you there for basically not being, letting the emotional side of things kind of just kind of hold you back. But I mean, I hear one of the ways you're dealing with this is photography.
Yes.
So in what way does photography help you?
So I actually started photography when I was with my ex, but it was very controlled. He controlled all of my photography, what I was allowed to photograph. If he didn't like something, you're not effing shooting that. That's not happening. Um, so for a long time, I just really wasn't feeling authentic. I was just shooting whatever I could shoot to make a couple bucks in my pocket to try to have some money to take care of myself.
Mm,
Um, After I left him, that was really when I just was like, I can authentically be me and figuring out who that person was first, because I didn't really know who I was at the time. And once I had that growth and healing, it was like I knew I wanted to speak out. I knew I wanted to help women, but I didn't know how could I take this part of empowering women and put this into my photography and combine the two. So that was when I started offering empowerment sessions. And our empowerment sessions are all about bringing women into our studio. And I always advertise, that we're a safe space for everybody to be able to come in and know that they have a safe space, not to just have photos, but if you want to talk, I am your friend. You can tell me anything in the world and I'm going to be here for you. Just know that you have me. I am in your corner. But we just bringing women in, and so many times, no matter what we're going through as women, we tear ourselves apart, whether it's because of the social life out there of, women have to look a certain way and we have children and we're expecting ourselves to look like we looked when we were 19, but we're women now, we're grown, our bodies are changing, and
mm,
learning to embrace that, because a big part of accepting all these things is the love that we have for ourselves. And that's
mm.
kind of what starts is that self-love first. So I use my photography to really teach women about loving themselves and loving their bodies and just embracing who they are.
Wow. Wow. So now how does because first off, how do you because some women might not even know that they're in that situation that you were in, because some of them might be, let's say a woman grew up in a position in which she had a parents, that's what she experienced and saw, from her parents, and then she finds a partner and then she is experiencing the same thing, but she doesn't know and can't really, what's the word? She can't really discern that, this is not how she should be treated per se. So how does a woman go about identifying that, hey, you know what, you're kind of in a situation that you should not be in? And how does the empowerment session help her to, one, realize that, and then two, be able to overcome it?
So a lot of the time when women come in, again, it's just making that safe space to chat. I love being able to share my story with them. And a lot of the time, so when they come in, they're getting their hair done, their makeup done, they get to sip champagne. It's a whole experience. So during that time, we're talking to each other. And sometimes, people usually do gravitate towards me. And for some reason, I've always felt people gravitated towards me a lot and wanted to tell me their life story. So during time, sometimes people share little things and, it's like red flag, red flag. And I never ever push it on women because I know some women just might not be ready to talk about it. But I always make it known and I'll, pull them aside once their hair and makeup's done because I would never say anything in front of our team because that's private. But once we're alone and I'll say, is it okay? I would just want to share this with you. And I'll just share information with them. And I kind of let them do what they want to do with that of, if you want to talk about it, you can. And if you don't want to talk about it, just know, like, here's my card. If you want to call me, I don't care what time it is, cell phone, call me if you just want to talk.
So when you say hair and done, hair is being done, is it like a wedding scenario? Is this like a hair salon or what?
Sorry about that. Yeah. So I do weddings, but I also do boudoir. So like boudoir and glamour. So our whole studio, we have a huge boudoir studio. We have lots of dresses and gowns because sometimes you take your own picture and your selfies and we're used to looking a certain way. We do our hair, a lot of, we have 4 or 5 hairstyles that we always wear. We wear makeup the same type of colors. So having someone else do it and seeing yourself in a different light and being like, oh girl, that's me.
Yeah.
Empowered. And they're like, oh, I didn't know I was that sexy. Okay. Oh, good. And that's what I love. I love seeing women flourishing and then they look and we don't let them look in the mirror. The whole time they're getting done, there's no mirror.
Okay.
And all done, then we flip the mirror and they're like, oh my God, that's me. And it's like seeing themselves in a different light. And for me, I love seeing their face light up because I'm like, yeah, girl, that's you. And just throughout the conversations, and just making that talk with them. And I've had so many women who opened up to me and like I've had women cry in the studio and just hug me. I just came here for a photo shoot and I wasn't expecting this. And like, you're so welcoming and friendly. And like, I just felt like I could tell you this. And that's honestly why I do this. It's not about the photos. It's the experience and the connection.
Wow. Okay. So what is the general advice you would give to, I mean, obviously, not everyone has because you're in Nova Scotia, right? And someone in because recently I just realized we had people in Spain and Alaska that watched this. I'm like, I didn't even know Alaska people. Okay, I had a joke in Alaska. I'm not gonna make it because the 5 viewers that we have there, I don't want to make that joke there. But what general advice would you give to the viewers to say, that are, because not everyone gets to be in one of your sessions. And if they're in Nova Scotia, obviously they would get to, I encourage them to do that.
Well, we actually travel all over the world.
Oh, you do?
Oh, yeah. So we've been traveling for the last, oh my goodness, like 8 years now out of the 14. So we travel all over the world. So even if someone does want to work with us, that doesn't mean they have to come to our studio. We will pack up all of our things and we come to them.
Wow, that's okay. So now let's say, someone is in that phase of mind. What advice would you give them, in more how to, because some people might not want, I mean, I'm pretty sure someone's going to hear what you're saying right now and still like, yeah, she's going to be like, yeah, I'm not leaving. There's still that, yeah, this is it for me. So what a general advice would you give to that individual, in that situation? Because some people might just need, because you stayed in for a few years and it took that one straw, to break the camel's back. So not that's a bad joke, but what advice would you give to that general advice would you give to that individual?
Aside from self-love, it would really and honestly be knowing your worth and getting comfortable being uncomfortable because so many times, and it's sad to say that we get comfortable with being treated like that, but it becomes a normal. But we need to know that it's not normal. And you have to get out of that comfort and fear because fear is never going to take you anywhere. Fear is going to hold us back. And there are so many blessings on the other side of that fear. We just have to take that step. And for me, I know it was the unknown. What if that unknown? And it terrified me. But I had to wake up one day and say, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure it out because anything is better than being here, being treated like this, and my children seeing this.
So did you, I mean, just your son or you have more kids now?
Kids now. I said
Okay. Okay, you said children, so I was like children. I was like, okay, because we're piecing. All right, so I'm trying to get, we're getting a detective here, going to the details. So how many kids do you have now?
I now have 3 children.
Okay, 3, and with your new husband, the two. Okay. So and your friend that you were, now she's a single mom and she's left that situation. Has she moved on? How was life looking like for her?
I am very proud of her. She is a music artist and she's
Okay.
in her life.
Wow. Okay, that's good. No, I love it. So, as we wrap up here, because this is a very, I like to say this is a very interesting story because it's something people go through, and not a lot of people actually speak out about it. And some people, there's a shame, there's a guilt, there's this, and I personally believe that this has helped people in general. So I've got a series of questions that I like to ask as we usually wrap up, and I call them the dumb fun questions. And the reason why I call them the dumb fun questions is because we had a guest on, and I said the dumb question. She goes, "Oh, there's no question that's dumb." I was like, "Well, trust me, I could ask you a few." But she's so then she's like, "No, they will call them the fun questions." So I was like, "All right, cool. In that case, we'll just call them the dumb fun questions." So the first question is, it's a rapid fire question. So it's have you ever accidentally taken a selfie during a wedding shoot?
I don't think I have, because my camera is facing out this way. So when it came,
Okay, yeah. So it would be almost impossible. That's why I told you it's dumb fun questions.
but my husband actually does my business with me. So we're a couples photography team and doing weddings. So we're both carrying cameras. So I have had him take some awkward photos of me.
Okay, that's a start. That's a start. Okay, so the second one is, do you think weddings would be more fun if everyone, including photographers, wore superhero costumes?
You know what? As a I'm neurodivergent and I love it because so many of my clients are also neurodivergent because they gravitate towards that because I'm very out of the box and I want to have fun. And I can honestly tell you, I've done some pretty crazy things for a wedding. And I would,
Okay.
they said dress up as a superhero. I'm like, all right, girlfriend, I'm coming in that storm.
What's the craziest request you've ever had? As a wedding photographer, like I'm presuming there's some really crazy ones. But what's the craziest one you ever had?
Oh man. Oh my gosh, there's been so many. I think one of the fun, I don't know if it was crazy or fun, but I had a bride that wanted to do photos in the bathroom. And they actually, those photos blew up. It was crazy because I never would have thought of it. She said, "I need to go take a pee," and she came over to me and she said, "How do you pee in a wedding dress?" And I said, "You gotta, hold it up." And she said, "Well, this should be interesting. Do you want to do pictures?" And I was like, "In the bathroom?" And she's like, "Yeah." So we ended up getting these amazing shots, and they're hilarious. All her bride or team is around her holding her dress up, and she's like this, sitting in the middle of this huge pom pom dress.
That no, that in a way is kind of funny to see, but I think it'd be a little uncomfortable to see. But huh.
Yeah, I don't think
Uh,
I have any really crazy ones. I think it's more me that's the crazy one because I have my clients all the time that say you're crazy because
uh-huh.
you do out of the box stuff. When you want to get that good shot, you do whatever it takes to get that good shot. I've climbed trees and everything to get that great shot, and clients.
Okay, that's I like how we took it very left turn there for a little bit, just when it went from started here and then all of a sudden we're on you climbing trees to take shots. That's hilarious. No, I love it. So if someone's watching this, they love your story, they want to work with you, they want to join your empowerment sessions, they want you to come over and climb a tree and take a wedding photo. How do they find you?
So they can find me on Instagram. It's forever_after_photography. That was just my way of kind of making some spaces in it. And you can also find me at foreverafterphotography.ca.
Okay. All right, guys. So the links are going to be in the description. So I always say this, if you're watching on YouTube, right, go in the description right now. And then we'll also leave it on the top pinned comment on YouTube as well. So you can go ahead and show some love to Kay. And if you're on Instagram, definitely go ahead and send her a DM. If you resonate with this, we'll tag her here. Definitely go ahead and, send her a DM. Check out the website. The links are going to be there. And also, if you're on Spotify, follow. And I always ask, share this. All we ask is one thing. We're not asking for a single dollar. We're not asking you for you to, donate or do anything. Just basically share this video with one friend, one person you believe is going to resonate. You never know if that one share, that person might be going through what Kay went through, a few years back. And you don't know if that one video might be the one thing to get in this person to realize that they're in a situation that they have to change their life. So then again, thanks again for everyone being on here. Kay, it was absolutely wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story. And everyone, bye-bye.